I've seen a lot of remakes over the years, but I don't think that I've ever seen a remake in which the person who directed the original also did a remake. You know,
Yes.
I was thinking the closest to something like that being done, and I didn't research this, so maybe there very well could be movies out there where it's like, no, a filmmaker made a movie and then
Especially
made
for
a
the time frame that we watched this one.
yeah. But I was thinking about like Ridley Scott with Prometheus and even Covenant, where he made Alien, and then Prometheus is not. It's supposed to be sort of like a prequel, but at the same time, it's sort of a recreation of what he was doing. And then the second half of Covenant was. Did you see Covenant?
No.
Okay, it's not that good. It's worth watching once, but for Danny McBride, he's in it.
Okay.
And I liked it. But the second half of that film is sort of a remake of the original Alien in a way. But yeah, no, Alfred Hitchcock, innovator of everything. This is a guy that, Hitchcockian, trying to think. There's so many terms in film that he invented.
Yeah, like where he puts his stamp on the product.
God damn it. But he I'm distracted. but yeah, in 1934 he made The Man Who Knew Too Much, and then he turned around and in 1956 made The Man Who Knew Too Much.
So good he made it twice.
He made it 2 times. So yeah, we're going to be discussing those 2 films today. Before we get into that, I'm Brian. I'm here with Spencer.
Howdy.
This is PulpMythos. We do movie reviews every single Friday. We're currently watching Perry Mason, which we talk about Sunday evening. So check that out and subscribe if you haven't. If you're returning, welcome back. And a little teaser for next.
You want to hear me tell my dog to quit drinking out of the toilet? Just keep listening because I'm getting ready to yell at him in a minute.
Which one?
McGruff, big ass.
I want to hear it.
For those who don't know, he's a 70-pound, 6-month-old German Shepherd puppy.
He's drinking out of the toilet right now.
He was trying to. He said his face on the counter yesterday when I was making a sandwich.
That's
just like staring at me. Yeah.
I just love that he loves to chew on ice. It's so funny.
Dude, it's his favorite.
But yeah, Perry Mason. Next Friday's movie review will be Hamilton. It's dropping on Disney Plus. Spencer's extremely excited because he loves musicals. We'll talk about that next week. And you do. I don't know anyone who watches.
I do. I don't know why. I can tell you.
And you go. Like he goes to the theater a lot.
Yeah.
We've been to a couple
I proposed
shows.
to my wife on the stage. They let me get backstage, and I proposed to her on front stage.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll talk about theater and specifically Hamilton next Friday. And we're going to jump into this Hitchcock film. So this is what we decided to do. Or this was actually Spencer's idea. We wanted to experiment with some different, ways of doing movie reviews. And he just said, well, let's watch an original film and then its remake. But let's split it. Let's find movies that we've not really seen or haven't seen in a long time. You watch one, I watch the other, and then we'll discuss it, sort of blind to what the other film is. So neither of us had seen either of these films. I like Hitchcock, but I haven't seen all of his stuff. And so I watched the 1934 Man Who Knew Too Much, and Spencer watched the 1956 one. Neither of us has seen the other, so we don't really know what happens in the other. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to discuss those movies Before we get into full
We talked
spoilers
about
like
it.
we usually do. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying we talked about it just so that we would know kind of the stuff, and we were both blown away with by how different it was, and just the 3 minutes we talked about it before we came on.
Yeah, we just asked, a few major main points just out of curiosity, and shit's way different. So, this should be interesting. Before we get into spoilers, what did you think of the 1956 version of The Man Who Knew Too Much?
The Man Who Did Too Much. It was kind of like a knockoff of The Man Who Knew Too Much. No, I really I liked it. Those who like Hitchcock and suspense and stuff, this one isn't nearly as, I don't know, gripping as some of the other ones. It's not as, fearful, but as far as, I don't know, like mystery, it's, very good. You don't really know what's going on until the end. And then once you figure that part out, you don't know why. So I think they did a really good job of, dialogue and everything else. The character interactions really good, but I felt it ended kind of abruptly. But I also know that movies back then, they began with the credits instead of ending with credits. So the end kind of snuck up on me because I kept looking at the runtime, and I was like, "There's only a minute left," and then it just kind of ended. But I did enjoy it. I would recommend, just based off of what you said, if someone's going to watch it, to watch both of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I intend on seeing yours. Yeah. The 1934 version, I highly recommend it. It's very short. It's an hour and 15 minutes. Definitely worth your time. There's a particular character in the movie. It's worth it just for that character. I'll get into that a little later. And it's also good especially if you've seen a couple Hitchcock films. You've seen the classic ones, Psycho, Birds, stuff like that. Go back and do the early part of his career and see where he started. I love the movie. Has some the technical aspects of it aren't as polished as later films. A film was still pretty damn new in 1934, so they were doing the best with what they had. But I will say there are certain sequences in this movie are very impressive for the time period. Absolutely. So hour and 15 minutes, definitely worth your time, especially if you consider yourself a fan of cinema and the history of it. So I recommend it.
you would say like fan of cinema. Not if you like movies. You're a fan of cinema. Pretentious dickhead.
So we're gonna jump in here. Like I said, neither of us has seen the other one, so I'm just gonna open with who's in my movie, and then you can do that with yours. So I don't know any of these actors, with the exception of one, so I'm not gonna get hung up on that. But basically, the main characters are Bob, and I believe your movie, they're named different because I did look at the IMDb. My main characters are Bob
Yes.
and Jill Lawrence, their daughter, Betty Lawrence, a man by the name of
None of that rings a
Abbott,
bell so far.
a
Nope.
man by the name of Abbott, and a man by the name of
Abbott.
Ramon. And those are the main characters.
Yeah,
And
none of those people are in this one.
And there are other characters besides them, but those are the core characters. And just for the hell of it, Leslie Banks plays Bob, Edna Best plays Jill, Peter Lorre plays Abbott, and he steals the movie, and he's the reason you should watch this movie. Frank Vosper plays Ramon, and Nova Philbeam plays Betty. So those are the main characters, and yours have different names and everything. So go.
Yep.
Go through that, and then I'll go into the beginning of the movie, mine, and then you can talk about the beginning of your movie.
Okay. James Stewart. Old Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stew.
Yeah, man. Oh, Jay Stu. He plays Dr. Benjamin and then Doris Day's in it, which I thought was, really cool. But this is Jimmy Stewart, like gray hair, older Jimmy, and he's probably 20 years older than Doris Day at this point. But Doris Day plays it's Josephine Conway. They call her Joe. She's a famous like movie actress or stage actress. And then the Draytons are the bad guy family. It's the Draytons are the Edward and Lucy Drayton by two people who I have never seen before in my life.
It's Brenda a family.
Devonzi, yeah. And then Bernard Miles. And then the kid is in it too, but like the kid is kind of just he's there.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
It's not a main character, but there is an Albert in this.
Abbott.
That's close. Albert Abbott.
Yeah, that already is different. It's interesting. Why would you change the names of the leads? I wonder. That's odd.
Well, and like you said, that it's the main two characters and they have a daughter, and this one that's the main two characters and they have a son.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the little changes. So I'm going to jump through the first huge chunk of my movie. I'm going to summarize it in like a minute. Basically, the Lawrence family, Bob, Jill, and their daughter Betty, they're in the Swiss Alps, and the opening credits is actually cool. This guy's sitting at a table and he's looking at brochures for going to vacation in the Alps, and then it goes into the opening credits. So that was interesting, but
none of that is remotely familiar to me.
So, what ends up happening is they're hanging out.
Even a little bit.
They're hanging out. There's a guy, a friend of the family, Louis. He's skiing. He almost crashes. There's some little comedy bits. We establish very quickly that Jill is a sharpshooter. She enjoys shooting guns, shot put and stuff like that. And at a dinner that evening, their friend Louis is killed. And before he dies, he whispers to Jill, "Hey, here's a key, and you get in my room, there's a brush." Her husband ends up getting in there, finds a little note, and this leads to where everything goes. You're also introduced to two characters. The one, it's clear, did the shooting, a guy named Ramon. And then another character who you don't know anything about until much later, a guy named Abbott, who's played by Peter Lorre, who literally owns this movie. Like, every scene he's in, he dominates. His acting is way above what everyone else is doing. He's the face on the poster. If you look up the original 34 poster, that's who's on there.
Oh, okay. I remember seeing that, but
he is awesome in this movie. So that's the opening section, and then we'll get to the rest later. But yeah, yours doesn't even open in the Swiss Alps, correct?
Oh no, not even. Like, it's not even a cold place, it's a hot place. Like, it starts, which is a very cool foreshadowing to the end, but it starts with this big like orchestra playing, and the credits are rolling, and then at the end it's saying something like, "You'll be able to hide it with the cymbals crash," and then the cymbals crash, and you're like, what the hell? You have no idea what's going on, and then it goes to old James Stewart there, Jimmy, sitting on a bus with his wife Doris Day and their kid Hank. I just remember his name, Hank. Like, I don't know, but they're on a bus in Morocco, going towards Marrakech, wherever. But they are traveling, so that part's similar. But they had been to London already because they were there because the Doris Day character is like a theater person. She's like a famous singer, so people know her. But he traveled with her there, and then they went on from there. They went to France for some medical convention, and then now they're traveling.
Are they Americans?
Morocco. Oh yeah.
Okay, my characters are British.
That's even better. Like, yeah, but they're Americans traveling around, and then they end up in Morocco, and
Huh.
then they meet somebody, which is kind of crazy because it's not. You look at religion. There's a lot of aspects of culture and religion in this. They have Hank is walking up towards the front of the bus to see something, and the bus hits the brakes, and he goes to fall, but he ends up ripping off this woman's veil. Like she's in, the burqa with the veil and everything, and this guy starts losing his shit on Hank. So Hank runs to the back of the bus, and Jimmy Stewart there is like trying to stop him from coming after his kid. And then some guy steps in between them. His name's Louis, and he kind of translates, but he's French. And then they get to know him, and it goes from there.
Huh. Yeah, way different. So like I said, we're speeding through this. We're not going to do a scene by scene breakdown, but basically, the Lawrence is the guy that's killed at the beginning of the film that gives him the key and the information. Turns out he's a special agent, and he has information about an assassination that's being planned.
That's Louis. That's the
Okay,
guy who
the
stopped.
same. Yes,
Yeah,
that's the okay. So that's the same.
yep.
And I
And his
believe
name is
he's
Louis.
French in this. Okay, so that's the
So
one
those two
thing,
are
the one name they kept.
the one common denominator.
So he ends up. You find out he's a special agent. Well, the bad guys are aware that the Lawrences have this information, as are the British secret agents or whatever. So what the bad guys do is they kidnap Betty. They kidnap the Lawrence's daughter and basically say, "Keep quiet. Don't talk to the to the cops, and you'll get Betty back. Otherwise, we're gonna kill her." And that becomes the moral, which is interesting. Sort of the what do you do? Do you
That was
give
the
that
same.
information? Okay.
That part was the same. I mean, it was set up a little different. The Louis character, um, they're in the middle of Morocco, and they're with the bad guys unknowingly. I mean, I didn't know they were the bad guys at this time, but they're walking around, and they're basically plotting to steal Hank. So they're standing in this
Mm.
area, and Louis gets stabbed in the back, and you don't see by who. And he's like walking forward, and he falls. And then James Stewart there, he's a doctor, so he runs up to try and help him, and he's in disguise, so he's got like makeup on his face. He has a turban on, like he's got all of the gear on, and so James is like, "What is going on?" So he whispers something to him about an assassination, and then hands him a note.
Okay. Does Stewart? I'm just gonna call him Stewart and Bob for mine, the same character. But
It's Benjamin McKenna.
there you go. Is in my movie when they go back to London, they leave the Alps, they go back to London. That's when they're confronted by the police and everything, and that moral question. What do you do? And at first they're just like, well, we don't give a shit about an assassination. We care about our daughter. But then they decide to go and investigate and try
Yes,
to solve it. Okay, so that's the same.
it just started at a different point. They started in Morocco, in the Marrakesh, talking to a French, because it's French Morocco. So they're talking to like a French cop, and the guy's like, "We're American." He's like, "I don't," which is funny now, even more so. He's like, "We're American. I don't give a shit what you want." Like he's like, "You can't interview us. We want our kid. Where's our kid?" And because at that time, they called the hotel, and the his name, I can't remember their names. It's like Vanderbeek or something. It's it's not Vanderbeek.
James.
Yeah, but the bad guys, they had already kidnapped their son, but he didn't know that. The male accomplice who's in it, uh, you don't know what's going on. So he's trying to call the hotel. He's trying to help them, and they can't find his wife. So he's like, "Well, I'll go find her. I'll go there and get her." Well, They go back to the hotel, and that's when they realize their kid's gone. So they answer
It
a couple different phone calls and stuff. Um, and then that's when they end up finding out that they need to go back to London. So they get arrested and everything in Marrakesh first, and then find out their kids taken from them, and then they go back.
so they're in London for the ending, the second half of the film.
Yes.
Okay, so that's similar. Okay, so part of their investigation, they at first, Ramon is the bad guy, but technically he is just a hired assassin. He's a shooter. He's like a sharpshot. And like I said, they established that Jill, the wife, also is at the beginning of the film. They both are good with guns. Does Doris Day have any involvement with firearms in your movie?
No, she's just a really good singer.
Because it plays a big part towards the end of my movie. That's why I asked.
Well,
Okay.
this plays a big part towards the end of this movie, which
Okay,
is
well.
weird too. So
So
it's
we
really
get
cheesy,
to
but it's
the investigation. The first one is at a dentist office. Does your movie have comedy woven in? Mine has a lot of sort of odd comedy sprinkled throughout.
well, yes, but like it's old references from like the 50s that I had no idea what they were talking about. And part of it was British. So it's 50s British humor. So I had no idea what was going on. Like they get to London and they run into this guy who they both know. She knows him from like the theater or whatever. So they're like hanging out and trying to figure out the note that James was handed by the secret agent Louis guy. So they're like trying to figure this out, and they're sitting in this guy's apartment, and everybody's laughing and they're giggling and shit. But I have no idea what they're talking about or what's going on. Like they're referencing stuff, they're drinking and laughing, and I don't know. It was funny because I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on.
They yeah, there's just a lot of weird little humor plugged in. So we get to it's the funniest scene in the movie. I laughed out loud. They so Bob, and I don't know if it's his brother. I wasn't clear on that. He was related to him, a friend or his brother. I don't know. They're out there investigating. They tell Jill, stay at the house. The men are going to go off and solve this. And at first I was like, okay, typical. That's, how they would write it back then. But they throw a twist at me. She actually becomes one of the main characters in the second half of the film, which sort of was surprising that a film in 1934 uh, would do that. You always think of, oh, women didn't get prominent roles and screen time and until later. But no, this film has a cool little sequence in the middle where she becomes the hero through the rest of the film. Does Doris Day sort of become a major factor in how things play out in the second half?
Well, she is throughout the whole movie. The second half, it's kind of a shared thing
Okay.
going back and forth. But like James is a lead part, but then she becomes the focus. Like she figures some of the stuff out. She's uses her star power to distract people, and it's yeah. Because in the
So
movie,
it's
like she
similar.
uses her star power too. Yeah.
So they end up going to this church, and I remember I told you Peter Lorre is steals the show. I mean, he's just so damn cool in this movie. He runs this organization that's wanting to do the assassination, and let me bring the amount of smoking on this movie. They must have went through the amount of cartons of cigarettes that they had to go through on this production. There's not everyone is constantly smoking. Peter Lorre smokes. You watch him smoke multiple packs throughout the course of the film, constantly lighting up a cigarette. I know they smoked a lot back in the day, but damn, I like it.
Well, I mean, we've talked about that before because period piece stuff like Peaky Blinders. It's very
That's a good example. Yeah.
period relevant. They smoke all the time, and they drink all the time. Like it's just constant drinking and smoking. So, I mean, times haven't changed all that much, but like people just smoke differently now. But
They get to the church, and the scene that I was talking about that made me laugh. They're at the back of the church, and they're singing. They're doing the hymns or whatever. and Bob and his partner, I'll just call him his partner. I think it's his brother. They're standing back there, and they're starting to suspect that okay, this is the place we need to be, and they're singing to each other as they're singing instructions back to each other. So he's like, "I
They did that
think
in this one
we're
too.
in trouble." So like they're singing back and forth. Uh, I was dying. I was like, "This is some funny shit." Like it was really funny how they do that in yours.
They did it, and which was even funnier because Doris Day can actually sing. So Jimmy Stewart's like trying to fake sing and whisper to her, and then all of a sudden Doris Day like belts out this like she's like and I was just like, oh shit, and then everybody stares at her. So then she like stops, and then she starts like trying to whisper sing to him. But it's the same thing. They open hymns books and everything. It was funny.
Okay, so that seems similar. Yeah, it
Yes.
was a funny scene. So turns out the church is a front for this organization, and they don't really go into it, or at least I couldn't make out if it was. I'm assuming it had to do with a political group of some kind that was trying to influence something. I don't know, but Abbott is the leader of this group. The head of the church is a woman, and she's like his right hand. And then, like I said, Ramon is not part of the movement. Basically, Ramon seems to be just a paid gunman. So the
They have
actual
one of those in this one too.
Okay. So like everyone at the church, they're loyal to the cause or whatever, but Ramon is not. He's just a guy that they're paying. And Abbott's the one running the show.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't want to jump too far ahead because you don't find this out to the end, but I'm going to say it anyway. The same
That's fine.
kind of thing. They're using the church as a front. Um, their name's the Drayton. I don't remember. It's like Lucy Drayton, and I don't remember the guy's name. But he's like the main antagonist up until the very end. But they're running the church, same thing. Uh, but his wife is the one that points out that they're sitting in the back. So she kind of nods over and like points to him. But uh, their hired gun is another French guy. He's a hired gun, doesn't really have anything to do with it. But you find out that the only reason that they kidnapped the kid was to pay the hitman. They were trying to extort the doctor to pay the hitman to kill this political guy.
Huh, none of that's in this. Okay.
Yeah, so the only reason they kidnapped this kid was to pay the hitman. It had nothing to do with the doctor or anything.
The does your church sequence end in a huge brawl that involves a lot of chairs being thrown?
The chairs weren't being thrown too much. A couple of them did, but there was a big like fight. Oh, remember
Okay.
you said that some big thing happened at a dentist office?
Yes.
Was that
It
because
was
they were
right. It was right before that scene. That's how they found
okay?
the church.
Okay, was that because they thought it was they misconstrued the message?
No, it was the correct message. It led the dentist office was a place where a meeting was going to take place between
Oh,
Abbott and
okay.
Ramon, and so he ended up going to the dentist. The dentist office was tied to it,
I just
and
remember there was a scene before the church scene that he was at a taxidermist, and it was funny as shit.
so I
Because
and the dentist one's funny too. There's a little comedy shtick in there.
they were looking for chapel, and I don't remember the name of it. It was like Ard Ardent Chapel or something, but that was also a person's name. So he went to this person's house, and they were a taxidermist. So there's like illegal animals and everything. So they're like trying to because they think they're getting busted. So they're like freaking out, trying to hide shit, and he's trying to get away from them because he doesn't give a shit. He's just trying to get out of there, and his arm gets stuck in like this lion's mouth. It was funny as shit.
The everything leads to a big main centerpiece of the film, and then I'll go into the end. And that centerpiece, and I'm curious if it's the end of your movie or not. So Bob gets captured by Abbott and his crew at the church, and he discovers Betty's there, his daughter's there, so they're hanging out. So now he's out of the equation, and it leaves it to Jill, his wife. So she wants to try and stop the assassination. So she goes to the assassination is going to be done at a massive opera, big performance. And at a certain specific point in the song, the hitman is supposed to pull the trigger. And there's
Yep.
a really cool scene where Abbott plays the record. He puts the record down and plays the song for him and
Yes.
shows him. Okay, so all that's in there. And it's a really nice, really well done scene. And Abbott's like, he's just bad. He's got his fucking cigarette and he's putting the record down. It's just a really well shot scene.
Well, that's what I was talking about, the foreshadowing, because the beginning of my version, it started with a like an orchestra playing, and then like it said, the crash of the cymbals will drown out the noise, and you have no idea what that means, and then the cymbals hit. But that comes into play later because that's when the assassination is supposed to take place.
So she gets to the place and um, you get to that scene and she does scream and it slightly distracts Ramon and he does shoot, but he does not hit a vital organ. He does not kill the target. So he ends up leaving and going back to the church. And
Yep, that didn't happen.
okay, so then the assassination fails. Jill was able to distract him, and now we go to the final 10 minutes of the movie, which is batshit crazy, and
Okay.
it becomes a completely different movie. And
Okay, so that orchestra scene, the same thing. Old James Stewart is running around trying to find where the assassin is, and his name, I don't remember his
oh,
name.
so he's there.
Yeah, he's at the
Oh,
orchestra
okay.
place. So
Okay.
the two main characters are both there. Their son is still, and I'll get to that in a second. They were at the church. Uh, James gets, beat up and stuff and gets knocked out. So they escape the church with their kid, but they lock all the doors. So James Stewart can't get out. So he climbs up the bell tower and you could just hear the bell going off. And I could not stop laughing because all I could think of was It's a Wonderful Life the whole time. And I was fucking dying. But every time a bell rings, but
Every time
so
a bell rings.
why are you talking like that? Why are you talking like what, Copper? So like he makes it down. He finds his wife. He finds Doris Day, and then they go back. They talk to the people who I said the comedic 50s thing that I had no idea what they were talking about. They met their place, and then they figure out the last clue, which is the opera. So then they end up going to the opera. They met there, and so they're trying to find what's going on. They see the ambassador go up one side, and then the hitman comes up and talks to Doris Day, and he's just like, "Yeah, it's like it's a nice day for an opera," and he's like talking shit to her and just smiles, and then walks away from her. So he walks up the other side, and then she's sitting down at the bottom of this big orchestra pit area, and she's looking back and forth, and she finds the hitman and she finds who the target is, but she's looking back and forth, and she loses the hitman. But he's like behind this curtain trying to, line up his shot or whatever. So right before the big crash, she screams and he misses. So then the ambassador and stuff's like, "Hey, I'd really like to thank you. And we would like to meet you. We would like you to come, have dinner with us." Well, you find out like right after that, who the main bad guy is. And I'll let you finish your main ending before mine. Because
So you have a twist at your ending?
yes,
Okay, mine does
right
not
after
have a
this is a
twist.
twist.
Okay. So mine ends with so the police know that Abbott and the gang are at the church. It's all has been revealed, and the assassination has been thwarted. Good job, Jill. We get the police head to the church. Abbott and his gang start lighting them up. I mean, they start shooting them. I mean, it's like a war movie. So the police have to back up. So the police are like, shit, man, we can't get to them. What are we gonna do? So they have to call. There's a local gun shop, and they have to get military weaponry. Yeah. So they bring these trucks in and start unloading all these rifles and everything. So the police all like pair up into like battle buddies, and they create a perimeter and build a thing around the house. And I swear to you, for about 5 minutes, it's nothing but an epic shoot. It's like a war movie in the streets, just shit's blowing up and shooting, and it's crazy. And you're like, what the hell? And Abbott, he's got a cigarette in his mouth and he's shooting out the window and he's like sits back down and takes a puff of his cigarette and like, I mean, it's and Ramon is like, this is bullshit. I got to get out of here. And they're like, you know, fuck you, the hell you will. You know, you're paid. You're in this. And so all this shit is going down, and they decide not to kill Betty yet because well, we might can use her, you know, to escape. So this whole battle, and there's even a scene where these two cops are like talking to each other, and they're like talking about their life, and they're setting up their little spot, and then they get all shot up, and you're just like, God dang, like it's crazy. And then it gets, I guess I'll go ahead and get to the end part because there is no twist in mine. So what happens in the end of mine is, remember I told you Jill is a shooter. Well, Ramon grabs Betty and takes her to the roof of the building of the church, and the cops are afraid to shoot. They're like, "Oh no, we can't, I don't want to. I might miss and hit the kid. I might miss and hit the kid." So Jill grabs a gun, a rifle, and aims it, and she's a sharp shot. Bam! Shoots and kills Ramon to save her daughter. So they establish early on that she's the one who saves her daughter. And then finally they end up breaking in the building, and then they just light up Abbott, shoot him all up, and everyone dies, and Bob gets shot, but he survives. So the last shot before the movie literally, does the end, is Betty, Jill, and Bob all being reunited and hugging and crying and oh, we're alive, and then credits, bam, the end.
Okay, that is not how this went. Okay.
Okay.
It was a lot longer after the whole orchestra scene. After she screamed and thwarted the shot or whatever, old Jimmy Stewart, busts through the room where they're at. So the hitman, he ends up grabbing him and he stumbles off the balcony and dies. Like he hits the floor of the orchestra pit and dies. Done. So they talk to the cops. It's still, at this place. So they go all back to the church. So they investigate the church. No one's there. But they end up finding out where he went. They go to dinner with the ambassador. You find out that the Draytons, that's who they're working for. They're working for the ambassador. Like, I don't know if it's son, but he wants to be the new ambassador. So he's trying to assassinate his dad or the leader so he can take over. So that's the big twist at the end of that one. But Hank. So they get to go to the embassy, eat and everything with the people. Sees Matt at the embassy and he knows that they're there. So they start trying to devise a plan to be able to find their son. Meantime, the wannabe ambassador tells your Abbott character, I don't remember, it's like Michael Drayton, or I don't remember, but they tell him, you got to kill Hank, because if he can point you out, we're all done for. We're all in trouble. So he's got to try the main antagonist up to go kill this kid. Well, Lucy Drayton, his wife, is really conflicted by this. She's like, look, we just kidnapped this kid to pay the hitman. We weren't trying to kill this kid. And the ambassador guy's like, well, tough shit. So Doris Day, they devise a plan to keep everyone distracted. So of course she starts singing that, Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will be. So she like goes off and sings this song for like 20 minutes. She keeps singing the same verse over and over and over, but she's singing it louder and louder. So Hank's up in this room with the Lucy Drayton character. Whistle this song, right? He starts whistling. So he busts the door down, grabs his Michael Drayton or climbs, kill your kid. But no. Walking out of the bathroom place, stairs, everybody's still distracted by Doris Day singing. And as they're walking down the stairs, Jimmy turns around and grabs him and like shoves him down the stairs, and the guy shoots himself. The end.
And then it just cuts off. That's interesting. That how different the films are. I'm curious. I would love to look into maybe I'd have to look and see if there's like a Blu-ray of the 56 version and see if there's a behind the scenes explanation for the changes in the script. It's because it's radically different and because it came out your film is 45 minutes longer
Yes.
than the 34 version.
Well, the end, like I said, yours ends in a very, big shootout, but the part leading up to my end was a little bit longer. And then on top of that part leading up to the end, there's also like the scene with the random character, the British comedy part. So that's like seems a little bit drawn out. The beginning prior to them getting the information was a lot longer than yours. So
Mm,
there's parts of I don't know that necessarily it was needed, but it was in there.
yeah. Um But yeah, that's the man who knew too much. 1934 and 1956 versions. I don't know what we'll do with it. I like this. We'll probably do this again after this coming week. Like I
Oh,
said,
I
we're
found a
doing
couple more that I thought would be cool, but
we're doing Hamilton this coming weekend, and we may have a surprise on the 4th. And yeah, we'll see after that. You said you had some ideas.
yeah, a couple different movie ones,
All right, we'll talk about
couple
that.
features.
Talk about that off air. So yeah, man. And, all right, cool. I think that's it. Anything
Well,
else? Well, bye.